Did you know that you can fly to Saudi for just over £100 return? How is this possible? With Wizz Air, of course. However, there are things that you should be aware of. This is my review of flying Wizz Air from the UK to Saudi. We start our journey in Luton Airport. Today's routing takes us via Budapest, where we have a connecting, non-connecting flight to Jeddah. I'll explain more about that later. Once you've checked in, you can proceed to the bag drop-off area if you have paid for checked-in luggage. The key word being paid for, as it's not automatically included. If you've travelled with low-cost carriers, then this should be of no surprise to you. If you haven't, where have you been for the past 30 years? If you don't have any checked luggage, you can proceed directly to security. Luton seemed to be undergoing some major refurbishment, so the security didn't seem well thought out. It felt more of a temporary setup. Once past security, you'll be at the duty-free area. A note about this, Wizz Air does allow you to take a duty-free bag as well as your normal rucksack as part of the free baggage allowance. I got some sandwiches from WH Smith's for the journey, which I'd recommend over anything they sell on board. This is the Wizz Air baggage checker, and I'm going to try my backpack. Let me move my selfie stick. There are several of these dotted around the airport and near the check-in area. I already knew that my bag would be okay, but this is an idea of the size of bag that is acceptable. My bag is actually bigger than the size if I were to measure it, but as long as it squeezes in, you'll be okay. In any case, they don't actually check it, or at least they didn't for my trip to Saudi and back. Like most low-cost carriers, Wizz Air opt to use the cheaper mobile stairs with boarding done from the front and rear doors. Depending on where you're sat, you'll have to make the call whether to go to the front or the rear, as Wizz Air, unlike Ryanair, don't advise on their boarding pass which door you should board by. When it came to boarding, I prefer to board last, as there isn't any huge point just standing in a queue. As I was travelling with my mum, who has mobility issues, I was surprised that there were no lift facilities to take us down to the ground floor. Most boarding gates have lifts, which is why I didn't ask the staff. I suspect they must have to take passengers separately to another gate in order to get to the ground floor to board. As I was boarding, I took a quick video about the good old British weather to upload to Instagram stories. Leaving a gloomy Luton. Oh my gosh, the rain is ridiculous.
Just to let you know, the cane will need to be kept up in the compartment.
Yeah, no
Thank you.
The flight was quite full, and although I was randomly assigned a seat, I still got to sit next to others I was travelling with. I guess they aren't as aggressive as Ryanair, placing you at complete opposite ends of the airplane. We left 45 minutes late with no clear reason as to why the aircraft was delayed. In terms of legroom and seat comfort, it's adequate enough for short-haul flights, which Wizz Air predominantly operates. The seats are covered in leather, which I guess makes it easy to clean. As Wizz Air operate one of the youngest fleets, everything was still fairly new. There is a tray table and seat pocket for storage, which was welcome. One thing I would have liked, and is essentially wasted space, is if the area above the tray table had some kind of a lip on it to be able to hold your phone or tablet so you can use it as your own in-flight entertainment. Now, even though I had some sandwiches with me, I thought it's only fair that I try something on board. I went for a tea and a snack because 1, I wasn't really hungry, and 2, they didn't really have much of a veggie or halal option. I had the yogurt, which tasted, well, let's just say I won't be trying yogurt options on Wizz Air again. Like I said previously, you're better off eating at the airport or buying a meal deal from WH Smith or Boots. It's not too bad. Somewhat clean. Actually more spacious than most other labs on aircraft I've come across. And if you've seen my Biman video, it's like 100 times better than the condition that I found the Biman toilets in. Roll it on. Not bad. I'm not going to spend too much time here. People are going to think I'm weird coming in here with a camera. We arrived into Budapest just after the sun had set. As I deplaned, I made some notes about the type of crowd that was on this flight. The flight was full of a bunch of 30 to 40 year olds who were flying to Budapest for a stag do, which is not surprising given the cheap fares Wizz Air offer. Unfortunately, these near enough middle-aged men were acting childish during the flight by deciding to press the call button, and when the crew arrived, they said they don't need anything. Pathetic way to behave for people that should know better. Sorry, rant over, back to the review. Unlike Luton Airport, where we essentially walked off the plane and into the terminal via the tarmac, here we parked in a remote stand, most likely as it was the last flight of the day, and shuttled across the airport to arrivals and immigration. At immigration, it isn't made clear that British passport holders can actually use the automated immigration kiosks, so do make use of these and skip the queue. Once past immigration, you'll need to collect your luggage, as it's not really a proper connecting service or airline, but simply a point-to-point airline like most low-cost carriers. Our next flight was the following day at 12:55 PM, therefore we stayed at the Ibis Styles next to the airport. I did a separate review on this. The following day I found myself back at check-in, but you might be asking why would that be if I had no luggage and I had already checked in online. Well, it turns out that Wizz Air or the Saudi government require further checks on your documentation. You still need to check in online as you do, but once you do, you're told to report to check-in to collect your boarding passes. Seems a very inefficient way to operate a low-cost airline. It didn't help matters that only 2 queues were open to perform this check, and 1 queue was solely reserved for those with priority boarding. As a result, queues moved very slowly. Once I was through security, there was a further immigration check for all international flights. Essentially, Budapest Airport is split into 2 halls. One side is for domestic Schengen area flights and the other side is for international flights. As you pass through this immigration check, you are essentially leaving Europe. This time round I made use of the e-gates, which had no queue and were quick. Bizarrely, you still need to get your passport stamped as you leave. At the gate I could already see that the crowd was different. Instead of lagerlouts on stag do's, you had pilgrims in their ihram clothing. We were once again bussed to the remote stand. As I was sitting near the front of the plane, I boarded via the front doors. One thing I noticed was that staff didn't really direct passengers to their seats. Personally, I don't need help, but I'm sure others on this flight who may not be regular flyers would have appreciated the assistance as they boarded. Our flight time from Budapest to Jeddah was just under 5 hours, taking us southeast over Bulgaria, Turkey, Egypt, across the Red Sea and finally into Jeddah. There's little to add about this flight as it was pretty much the same as the previous flight into Budapest. The only noticeable difference was that they do indeed announce the Miqat point for those intending to perform Umrah. We landed into Jeddah on time just as the sun set. A little tip for those wanting extra legroom. This was row 29, which seemed to have the greatest legroom. They do charge for seat selection, but this is what you'll get if you choose row 29. We were once again bussed to the terminal. Immigration was actually quite swift. They do take your photo and fingerprints. Directly after immigration, you'll find the baggage area. Once your bags are collected, they are scanned once again. Just a word of warning, they didn't seem to like me recording, so I'd avoid it in this area. Now this is something I didn't know. It turns out that Wizz Air and several other low-cost carriers use the North Terminal. We landed about 7 PM and I had a train booked for 9 PM, which I thought was plenty of time since the train station is attached to the airport. To my surprise, it turned out that the station was located in the South Terminal, which was almost half an hour away. Cue the mad rush to get from the North Terminal to the South. There is a bus, but it would have meant us missing our train. We tried to negotiate with taxis, but no one seemed to accept card. Eventually we found a driver that accepted card, with the journey costing us 150 Saudi riyals. We made it to the terminal with 10 minutes before departure. Even the ticket lady was telling us to hurry.
Yeah, Medina, yeah. Huh?
What time?
It's at 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
We managed to make it on board. I'll have a separate review for the Haramain train, so keep an eye out for that. Our return journey would see us back at the North Terminal, so make sure your taxi driver knows this. Like our flight from Budapest to Jeddah, our return flight also required us to check in online, but still collect our boarding passes at the airport check-in desks. Now, even though you can technically take Zamzam water, if you're taking hand luggage only, you won't be able to once you get to Budapest airport due to the 100ml liquid limit. If you do want to take Zamzam water, I'd recommend buying checked luggage or consider an airline with checked luggage already included, as checked luggage can work out quite expensive since Wizz Air charge it per flight and you'd essentially have to pay for it for 4 flights in total for a typical return journey with Wizz Air. Unlike the glitz of the new South Terminal, the North Terminal is bare and basic, a bit like the airlines that operate from here. But I guess that's why many choose Wizz Air, as they simply want to get from point A to point B for the lowest price, and for that Wizz Air delivers. Like I said before, there's nothing new or unique about Wizz Air, as the low-cost carrier model has been around for a long time now and is well established. Where it falls down is the connecting element or lack of it. It markets itself as a point-to-point airline, but when searching on websites like Google Flights or Skyscanner, it will often show connecting flights, but these are not really connecting flights in the sense that one would get from the likes of Emirates and others. When I got to Budapest airport on my return journey, we landed at just before 1 AM. It turns out that the airport requires you to completely pass through immigration and collect your luggage. Once you're landside, you cannot get back into the terminal as everything is closed overnight. Even though we had our boarding passes, it didn't matter as security was closed. There wasn't even a single shop or vending machine available while we waited for our 6 AM flight. Fortunately, security did open at 3 AM, allowing us to proceed to airside where duty free and a few other shops were open. For this reason, I would not recommend flying Wizz Air in this connecting, non-connecting manner if flying with children or elderly. If you're using them for a simple direct journey, it's fine, or if you're a bunch of young guys or girls, it's fine too, as you'll be able to cope with the stress that comes from these overnight layovers. If you're looking to perform Umrah, then there currently is no beating Wizz Air on price. But take into account what I said about the issues I encountered with the airport connections and also the fact that it lands at the North Terminal in Jeddah, which can present problems if you want to take the train. In my opinion, I would price up everything, including overnight hotel stays that may be required in Budapest or other Wizz Air European hubs, price up the meals on board, and even checked luggage if you're planning to bring Zamzam water back or simply need the extra space. Whatever price you end up with, compare that to a direct flight with the likes of Saudi Airlines or a connecting flight using a full service carrier such as Emirates. Again, take into account if you're going with kids or elderly and then make your decision. In hindsight, as I was travelling with my mum, I would have gone direct with Saudi Airlines and not with Wizz Air. Hope this review has been helpful and given you some idea of how it is to travel from the UK to Saudi. The bottom line is there is more to consider than just the headline cost when it comes to flying with Wizz Air.